Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with a bit of Total War Warhammer quick match gameplay. This time around I am playing once again as Empire against the Dwarfs, led by Mr. JPCH on the map Volksgrad. Trying out a new sort of Empire build that I think could function against a few different factions, or something similar could function against a few different factions, based around Halberds. Mostly I was inspired by one of the Warhammer books, the Emperor's Armies, and reading through it, it seems like most of the like in the lore, a lot of the Empire armies are simply composed of halberdiers, backed up by a few handguns and maybe Reichsguard or knights. So I have to try kind of a both lore friendly as well as maybe practical build for the Empire to use. So going up against dwarves, you need a lot of armor piercing. Usually the solution is to run a lot of great swords. That's usually the standard Empire meta, I think, against dwarves. I was trying something a little different here and run a lot of halberds, because halberds are a lot cheaper. You can almost field 50% more halberds than you can in great swords, and they still have armor piercing. They still have very high melee. They have very high melee defense, so they can kind of tank it out and last for a while in extended melee, even against very good units. And I'm hoping that with some buffs, they will be able to actually dish out some hurt as well. Their biggest disadvantage, of course, is their attack speed, which is actually fairly low. And that's one of those hidden stats that doesn't get shown, unfortunately, on the unit cards. Regardless, I'm bringing Karl Franz here as my lord, and he is of course coming in with a bare minimum of items, though he's on a bartered warhorse to get that maximum armor. The main reason I brought Karl instead of any other lord is because I wanted to go cheap and bring a lord on a horse, but at the same time I did not. I wanted armor piercing, and Karl's the only guy who delivers on that. So he's coming in with a stand your ground, Galmaraz to boost himself up, but also Reichland Runefang to boost up my halberdiers, who otherwise have very low melee attack, and make him capable of punching through the majority of dwarven melee defense, with the exception of Iron Breakers, where they would still probably have absolute nightmare situation against. Then I do have two Empire Captains, who are once again here to just stiffen up my front line. They're kind of that cheap support option for Empire. Just solid all-around units, some decent missile resistance, shields, decent melee stats, and they're just very tanky and can hold out for a while. Then I bring a light wizard with several different spells, actually, not just Net of a Mintok, which has kind of been my standard. I brought False Protection, just kind of defensive spell for priority target if I need to defend someone specifically. Net of a Mintok, just in case I want to cut the dwarves off. This, in retrospect, I don't think this is that great of a spell to pick against dwarves, but I wanted, just in case, it's just a very solid utility spell. Banishment to hopefully hit any blobs. Banishment is one of the vortexes where even if it doesn't stay in the one place, it does enough damage on the initial cast that it can be worth it whenever cast. And then Baroness Time Warp, which is basically there, sort of like Here We Go for the orcs, is there to boost up my melee attack after Reichland Runefang has expired, really. So just like the relationship between Y and Here We Go, I'm basically trying to recreate that here with Reichland Runefang and Baroness Time Warp. I'm going to actually throw things into full speed, because things do develop fairly slowly here. This is a very wooded map. It takes a while for me to cross, because my opponent's camping in one of the only open stretches of ground, and it's just kind of all you can do with dwarves, because he's very reliant, of course, on his skirmish line, and so he needs to kind of deploy in a position that allows that. He does have a bunch of I brought a bunch of halberdiers, obviously, because this is a halberd-based army. No great swords, nothing like that, but 7 units of halberdiers. And yeah, they're just kind of spaced out here, ready to kind of hopefully surround my opponent and dish out a lot of hurt. Then out on the flanks, 2 units of handguns just to provide some fire support against priority targets. And my cavalry contingent is doubled up Reichsguard. One Reichsguard over here, and a second Reichsguard unit, which is slowly but surely worming its way towards my opponent's backline. My opponent did a very conventional, I think, dwarven army against Empire. He brought Ungrim, which is probably the only really, and a lot of Slayers, which is we might have been going for a Slayer theme here. I'm not entirely sure. It definitely kind of feels that way. Ungrim is, of course, unbreakable. He's not the best of melee lords, but he's fairly cheap. Unbreakable, has an anti-large bonus, armor piercing, very high melee attack. So in a lot of ways, and of course, still has great armor and all that stuff. So he's a very good lord, nonetheless, as far as dwarves go. But just not that popular pick, but still cool. And he is coming in with only stand your ground, so nothing too fancy. But against Karl, with that anti-large bonus, he might do well, because Karl is on a horse. Then 3 Slayers in the back, which is a kind of interesting choice. You can see the Goblobbers going in. I'm not sure if this is intended for a theme here, or for just shutting down cavalry, because Slayers are, of course, amazing against cavalry, if they can catch it. 2 units of Vanilla Slayers and Dragonback Slayers. His front line is a mix of Dwarf Warriors, and dwarf warriors with great weapons. Interchanging, partially probably just to hold the line against squishy units with the dwarf warriors. While dwarf warriors with great weapons are there to slug it out with sort of great swords and those sorts of units. Then he does have the warriors of Dragonfire Pass anchoring the line in the center. Miners out on the flanks, kind of providing that cheap buffer, face tanking infantry. And then a very strong firing line, including Goblobber to break up my morale and just to focus high priority infantry units. 3 units of Thunderers who could absolutely mess up majority of my force, which is unshielded, and then of course Ulthar's Raiders, which can debuff my units, drop their missile resistance and missile parry by a lot, and just make them very vulnerable in general. So yeah, we're throwing things into full speed here. My Reichsguard is still worming its way around the flanks. I'm trying to go nice and slow, but honestly it's not working out because I'm taking a lot of Goblobber fire. And you can see here, despite the fact that they're spaghetti lined, the Halberders are nonetheless taking some very heavy hits. Goblobber is probably one of the most cost-efficient artillery pieces in the game. If you're going to bring any artillery, if you're a person who never brings artillery and wants to know what the one artillery that's usually worth it is, it's Goblobber. That it has that discourage effect. It's incredibly accurate. It can bust open enemy artillery positions with the morale debuff. It's just a very, very strong, very powerful artillery piece for the cost. It costs like 900 gold, I think, so it's dirt cheap by any standards, not even just dwarf standards. But yeah, here we are kind of pushing forward. I'm going to throw things in the... that's a mistake there. I'm going to throw things in the fast forward a little bit. You can see I'm trying to group up on the reverse side of this hill and then push over. You see my handgunners are now taking fire from Goblobber. My Reichsguard pushing forward does reveal the Ulthar's Raiders. In the meantime, our other Reichsguard unit is kind of worming its way through the woods, trying to gap close to my opponent, and ready for a charge. Now, Reichsguard is a very cheap cavalry by Empire standards. It's not as cheap as Empire Knights, but they have very solid melee stats. Melee defense of 28 is not terrible. Melee attack of 32 is not bad, especially when you consider the fact that their charge bonus is a solid 62. Their speed isn't amazing, but against dwarves who have no speed to speak of, it's fine. And of course they have shields as well as very heavy armor. 120 armor means that they are very tanky. Even slayers will struggle to put them down. So here you can see I'm pushing in, and I finally decided to kind of crest this ridge, push in. My Empire Captain takes a huge amount of fire here. I don't have any Lore of Life, which is kind of a standard thing for me, but I didn't bring Lore of Life here, so I don't have anything to heal my troops once they're taking damage. You can see my opponent did pop stand your ground, I think a little prematurely here, or maybe anticipating the charge, but Halberds have practically no charge bonus. They actually have less charge bonus than Dwarf Warriors, and significantly less charge bonus than Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, so not much of a reason, I think, to pop stand your ground there. Regardless, you can see these Dwarf Warriors getting bogged down. My Halberds are just kind of plowing in, and now my handguns are trying to get into position. These handguns over here trying to get in position, and now the main kind of course of events, Reichsguard charging in. You can see a banishment going in down over here, and you can see that despite the fact that it kind of wanders around and goes off course, it actually did a lot of damage to these Thunderers, who were the original target. These Slayers also get clipped by it. It's doing a lot of work. My Reichsguard, in the meantime, has kind of piled into my opponent's backline, and now they're swinging into his infantry blobs and trying to break him. Doing great work there. Karl has gone in. He's popped his Reichland Runefang to provide that buff, and he has popped Golem Raz. I think that I shouldn't have probably done this. I should have probably saved it for when he was going to fight Ungrim. Regardless, you can see this Empire Captain over here is absolutely getting smacked down by Ungrim. He doesn't really stand a chance. Ungrim has a huge melee attack, and with his high armor, the Empire Captain can't hit him very hard. My handguns are trying to whittle down the Ulthar's Raiders. In the meantime, I do pop a Baroness Time Warp over here, Overcast, to get that AoE, and that way all my Halberdiers are attacking very, even though they attack slowly, they will be hitting fairly often, the majority of their hits, and so they are just kind of tearing through these poor Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. These handguns over here are sitting around a little bit, and unfortunately I didn't really utilize them correctly here. Definitely a bit of a mistake on my part. You see, though, the Reichsguard is just kind of bouncing around. And that's something you definitely want to do. If your opponent does a more spaced out build like this, bounce around your cavalry. Just in, out, dart into various units, and keep his anti-large units trying to pursue you. Slayers are not that fast. They have 40 speed. You're much quicker than them with the Reichsguard. So just try to outpace them and keep running. Over here, you can see the fight here has kind of deteriorated. It's Ungrim against Karl, and Karl's actually going to win out in the long run, though just barely. He'll eke out the win. And despite the fact that Ungrim did pop stand your ground at the last second there. And now it's just the miners and the warriors or Dragonback Slayers trying to hold this whole area. You can see over here in the meantime the Reiksguard has kind of plowed in. It's actually, you can see that despite the fact there's a lot of Slayers here, they're not really able to tear through the Reiksguard. Handguns are tearing into the Thunderers. My captain has finally returned, which means he's going to be able to push to the back of these Thunderers while my opponent isn't paying attention. And Reiksguard is just kind of bouncing around, running amok in my opponent's back line, messing him up. Unfortunately, I make a huge mistake here, and I let Carl get caught by the Slayers. My opponent focuses him very hard. And I do believe he actually focuses him with the throwing axe as well, but regardless, you can see Carl's HP just drops incredibly quickly and he gets wiped out. This was a huge mistake on my part. He's on a horse, and Carl has pretty pitiful melee defense. That's one of his big disadvantages, and so against Dragonback Slayers, he will not hold well. So huge mistake on my part there. Reiksguard over here, trashing the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, just still running amok. Reiksguard is just, and dwarves have a lot of non-AP units, and Reiksguard will just mitigate a lot of that damage with their huge armor values. Over here, Halberd's pushing in, just trying to kind of mop up these infantry units. There are still quite a few Slayers, and Slayers will do fairly well against Halberds. Halberds have very high melee defense. The split is 25 and 42, I do believe, on melee attack and melee defense. But Slayers have, I do believe it's like 38 melee attack. Those are Dragonbacks, so it's not really worth tracking. Slayers, yeah, 38 melee attack, so they'll be hitting fairly consistently. Thunderers are getting overwhelmed by the paired up Reiksguard over here, but you can see the Reiksguard at this point is very badly mauled, so they're not really able to do as well anymore. And my own handgunners, I think, are hurting my Reiksguard a fair bit there. Now my opponent's handgunners are coming back online. It's a bit of a problem. Empire Captain pursuing these dwarves off the field, trying to make sure they don't come back, because every unit at this point could really make a difference. Carl's gone, so both sides are suffering that morale penalty. Dragonbacks are almost gone. You can see down to one model. And they're still fighting. Still don't want to die. Halberdiers over here, pushing in. The Light Wizard is brawling in the middle. Halberdiers over here, they're very tired. One of the problems with Halberdiers is that they tend to get, because their fights with infantry, because their melee attacks so low, tend to get dragged out a lot. They get tired, and that drops their stats by a fair amount. But the Slayers are tired too. It's kind of been a lot of hacking and slashing back and forth, and so yeah, now we're pushing in with the Halberds, and I'm just trying to overwhelm this center pocket of Slayers, which is all that my opponent really has left, anchoring his army together. Halberds are coming, recovering a little bit, so I'm hoping, hopefully, I do believe I send them back in eventually. Handguns still have a little bit of ammo, and they're still firing away. It looks like my other handgun unit did it rout off. I think it did rout off, and you can see just it's kind of the end here for the Slayers. They're slowly but surely getting whittled down. Light Wizard's in there. The Empire Captain's still around and kicking. The Empire Captains are afoot, so the Slayers don't have an anti-large bonus against them. And though my opponent's army is kind of trying to march in, I still have a very healthy amount of Halberdiers here. 61 models there, 38 there. It's still a decent amount, 53 models there. So as long as my army doesn't break, they'll be capable of winning this out. And at this point, my opponent's army does shatter. So very close game, very tight game. You can see the Slayers are still around and kicking, and we're just going to fast forward through this because it's a bit of a slow but steady beat down on the last few Slayers. But yeah, it was a very brutal battle. You can see, nonetheless, the Halberdiers traded very effectively. You can see one of the handguns practically did nothing, got shut down pretty effectively by my opponent. Carl, of course, laid the smackdown on Ungrim, which was a big win there. But the Halberds traded pretty well. They have a lot of them gained chevrons over the course of that match. This was the only unit that went in with chevrons, and despite that, 1, 2, 3, 4 units gained chevrons. So very solid performance out of them. One of the units of handguns did very well, tearing through my opponent's backline. The Reiksguard, of course, bouncing back and forth. One of them did gain a chevron as well. Always, if you see a unit's gain a chevron over the course of a battle, it means it probably did pretty well. The biggest problem there was, of course, the Slayers, who Halberdiers, armor piercing does nothing for the Halberdiers against Slayers, and their armor is very low, so the Slayers actually just shed a lot of hurt to Halberdiers. The Dwarf Warriors did terrible against the Halberds, especially the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. I think had a bad day of it because their melee defense is very low, so even the Halberdiers with their pitiful melee attack will get through. Thunderers did okay, the Ultra Raiders did okay, the Goblobber did amazing, as was expected. You can see that 57 kills on, I do believe this was just a banishment, basically. Light Wizard did a little brawling in the middle, but he's not the best melee combatants. But yeah, I'm not sure Halberds are the best of choices against dwarves. But you can field a lot more of them than you can greatswords, which is something to keep in mind. They cost 650, the greatsword's 950. So definitely was a bit of fun playing a lore-friendly kind of Empire build, having a lot of fun with it, and just testing new things out. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. Any comments, criticism, any questions about Total War, anything like that, quick match or any requests for units you'd like to demonstrate, that sort of stuff, then be sure to post those down in the comments, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.